This could be the zenith of my rugby AM career because I'm here backstage in Keighley before one of the MJK events with the King Wally Lewis, arguably the greatest rugby league player of all time. Wally, it's a pleasure to have you here on Rugby AM. How have you enjoyed your first week in England?
Always good. Love coming back to England. It's been a plan of mine to do it for the last 4 or 5 years, to come over here and to be able to get around a lot of the footy clubs and do some guest speaking and catch up with some old mates that I had when I was playing for Wakefield Trinity in 1983-84.
We're not long after the World Cup, and one of the things that was impressed upon me was seeing Gary Schofield and Brett Kenny catch up and carry on like they'd never left off, really close mates, and it just re-emphasises this point that rugby league's all about friendship, making friends, and even though there's a 12,000 mile gap and sometimes years between seeing each other, you can hit off just like you've never been apart.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to catch up with Scoey as well. Right. It was terrific to see him, and we went through some old times, and I also had a little bit more time with an old mate of mine from Wakefield Trinity, Colin Maskell. Maskey, yeah, I found him to be an absolute pain in the backside on plenty of occasions. I became great mates with him while I was playing for Trinity, and then he came and stayed at my place in Brisbane while he played in the Brisbane Rugby League competition, and I ended up swapping clubs then, and so I got the opportunity to play against him, and whenever we came up against him, he was not welcome in my house. He had to shoot, get out, go and sleep in the car, sleep anywhere he liked, as long as it wasn't in my place.
Brilliant. And I've heard you've been up to Whitehaven as well. I know the Cumbrians love the rugby league, and it's great to see a legend go up there because sometimes you feel for them because they are starved of that real quality. But how was your time there up in Whitehaven?
Fantastic. I enjoyed that as much as anywhere here in England at the moment. It was, I think, a bit of an experience driving up there. There were some good snowfalls on the way up there, but I remember playing at Whitehaven when I was at Trinity. We drove up there in a bus one day. It took quite a while to get up there, and when we got there, none of the players wanted to play on the pitch. It had gone all hard. The mud had set and packed, and guys were saying, we'll roll our ankle, we'll break the leg, we'll do something here. Let's come back on Tuesday night and play it. And I said, you blokes are kidding. You're going to be joking. We're not getting back on that bus, going all the way back to Wakefield, and coming back up here on Tuesday, and when it could be even colder. It was the most... it was the most comfortable game of rugby league I've ever played. There was a gentleman's agreement that we were basically running into each other. Don't throw them on the hard rock below. Just do the right thing, and it was an experience. It's a working man's town up there, and you certainly have to appreciate the guys. Their love of rugby league, though, was extremely impressive. I was talking to the guys all night long. They were asking questions that I was struggling to get the answer from. They knew that much about it.
Brilliant. And Mick Spate and the entourage with MKJ were coming down and said they had a fantastic evening, mainly because you're doing some impressions of Rabbits Warren. I don't know if you've got a little short one for us here on Rugby AM.
Oh, it's hard not to have. Everybody has that, particularly when I'm working alongside him in the Channel 9 commentary box. I certainly remember watching him when I was just a young boy, and he used to be wearing a short safari suit in those days. And but whenever you get him in, you give him a little bit of criticism in the box. Turn it up, mate. Don't bring that one in here. Look at the Queenslanders. They're starting to get excited in this Origin game. Oh, look at this. They're going to get over the top again. And you look at him, and it's an experience to be in the box with him, to see him continue on. You end up laughing and pointing at him, and he just shakes his head, goes outside. I've never seen a bloke get so built up for a game of footy, though. He's got this dream about absolute perfection in a commentary call, and he'll turn around and say to the guys, that wasn't a bad call there today. And you'll get Gus Gould and Sterlo and all the rest of the blokes saying, mate, that was rubbish. That was garbage. Wasn't your best call at all. And he gets all carried away, gets upset, but he's a real perfectionist. And I've got to say, though, as much as we have a go at him, he's been one of the people that have been responsible for the success of rugby league, because people love watching and listening to the game.
Certainly, it's all about the personalities, and we've got the jack of all trades and the master of them as well sat here right here. Great impressions. I wanted to ask you a little bit about the World Cup. I've just come back from there, and it was a great event, and what was really impressed upon me was the sort of family and cultural atmosphere from, in particular, the Tongans, the Fijians, the Samoans, and just the World Cup Cup in general, I thought it was a real success. How did it impress upon you compared to some other World Cups you've seen?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of people that were suggesting that it wasn't going to work. Australia were going to do it pretty easy, and it was very difficult for England if they didn't have any of the Welsh or Melbourne to be able to strengthen the side, or Irish guys. But I thought that it was a particularly impressive campaign. I've got to agree with you. Certainly the Tongans and Samoans were amongst the most aggressive players on the tour. It was something quite extraordinary, and that game where they almost got home over England was one of the most impressive games I thought of the whole campaign. And if you had a look at Wayne Bennett after that, there was a sweat off the brow. He's a bloke that doesn't always coach with a lot of emotion attached to him, but for that game, I think he almost filled his strides at the end of the game, because he got very, very nervous about it. England, the performance in the final against Australia, a lot of people saying, well, they didn't win, we can't claim success, but to be restricting Australia to just one try in a game, you've got to regard that as one of the best defensive efforts I think that I've seen over the last 10 or 15 years. It was very, very impressive. The biggest problem that England had, I believe, is that they probably had one or two areas where they were doing it a little bit tough, and I'm certainly not putting the players filling in those spots down, but in the centres was one area that I thought they really battled to match Australia. So it promises great things for the future. What Wayne Bennett is going to do, I've got no idea. I don't think Wayne's probably thought about that as well, but it has promised some great things for the future.
Were you surprised then at that scoreline? When you went there, what were your own expectations?
I probably thought that Australia were going to win it by 14 points, 12 or 14 points at least. They were playing at the home of a lot of players, a lot of Queenslanders in the Australian sides, playing at Suncorp Stadium. They always handle the conditions very well. It's an open attacking game that's usually played at a great pace. To restrict Australia to one try, you've got to look a long way into the history books to see that, particularly in a final. And I thought that was one of the most impressive defensive efforts that I've seen in the last 15 or 20 years. It was wonderful, and I think that while the disappointment of defeat probably was there for the Englishmen, they've got to feel pretty good about it, because there hasn't been a team that's kept Australia so tight and so nervous I reckon for at least the last 12 years.
You mentioned the ground there, Suncorp Stadium, and it's a place that was obviously synonymous with your career. Lang Park, I believe it was called back in the day. There's a big statue of you outside, and I remember, you won't remember this, but I was picked to play for England in 2008 World Cup, and me and Kevin Sinfield, we didn't get in the team for the semi against New Zealand there, and we were sat sulking in some sort of sheds, and you popped your head round the door in 2008, and we both just looked at each other like that, and I got a ball, you signed me a ball, and I was so excited because it went on my testimonial the year after at Leeds. Unbelievable. But what's it like to have a statue outside a ground that's so legendary with your career?
The ground itself, mate, I've been on there hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. Both of my grandparents live within 300 yards of the ground. I basically used to go there every Saturday morning. My grandfather was the local barber in those days, so I used to go over there and it was go the shears over the top, get the what hair I had in those days shaved off, and then run over to the ground, jump the fence and kick the footy around for an hour or two. So by the time I got to play my first senior grade game at Suncorp, previously known as Lang Park, I had much more experience than anybody else on the field. It's got something about it. It's got atmosphere that's attached to it, and you feel pretty lucky about playing there. And it's I know there's been quite a couple of guys that have said the day that they die, if they're going to have their ashes spread, they know where they want them, and that's at Suncorp Stadium. Peter Jackson, a famous Queensland and Australian centre, he's had his ashes spread over the field, and I think when that was the case, it was an indication of just how much respect the players have for the ground itself, and what sort of role that the Suncorp Stadium has played in their life.
Absolutely, and I think if there's any other character, personality within rugby league who's synonymous with Brisbane and Lang Park or the Suncorp as Wally Lewis, it would be Wayne Bennett. Now obviously Wayne Bennett's the England coach. There's a lot of people interested in Wayne Bennett because he's an interesting character. When he does interviews, he's not like most coaches in the Super League, which is fair enough, he is what he is, and he's paid to coach. But were you surprised when he took the England job, particularly after having the New Zealand job and doing so well with them in 2008?
Yeah, it was. I mean, To be honest, I was a little bit surprised.
Right.
I thought he took it on as a personal challenge more than anything else, because I couldn't see how you had a bloke that was involved with an Australian team that went across to co-coach the New Zealand team, and now he was coming across to coach the English team. The players can't do that. The coaches, well, I guess it's a different role these days than it used to be. I think he probably felt a little bit insulted that he wasn't given the opportunity to coach Australia, and thought, well, the next thing for me might be taking on the English job, and nobody gives him much of a chance. They all predict it's going to be a Australia versus New Zealand final. This could be the ultimate way of insulting them, and he did it. Look, his record just tells the story of what a fine coach he is. I've known him for a long, long time, and one of Wayne Bennett's priorities in his life is to not just be a good football coach. He wants to turn them into better people as well as better footballers, and he likes to try and get hold of a couple of guys that are struggling with their lifestyle away from football, if they're doing it a bit tough, or not being as good a people as they should be, and he doesn't hold back in giving them a gobful. I'm one of the blokes that probably had a reason to feel a little bit disappointed. He showed me the door at the Broncos, or just basically said he didn't believe that there was going to be a position there for me when I was 31 years of age, and there was some other guys that had some great talent about to step onto the scene. Kevy Walters being one of those, and I had the chance to play with Alan Langer. So I've got reasons, I suppose, to be a little bit angry at him, but I think he's done a fine coaching job. He's got a great record with premierships. He's getting on a little bit now, Wayne. I think he's 67, or I think he turned 68 on January 1. And it'll be interesting to see how far he goes. He feels as though he's done a good job with England, but when you know Bennett, unless he wins, he never ever sleeps a happy man.
Good. Well, it bodes well for England's future. Certainly a great World Cup in 2017, I thought. And whilst I was over in Australia at the World Cup, I read and watched all about this gentleman right here, Wally Lewis. And your books are outstanding. But if I was to do a word count of the most popular words that come out of your mouth in a book or in a documentary, I reckon in the top 10 would definitely be Queensland. Queensland is synonymous with your history, your legacy, your heritage, and you talk about it an awful lot. It's obviously something you're extremely passionate about. Now, I'm really passionate as well, because I'm a Yorkshireman, right? And we've got this thing over here, Yorkshire, Lancashire. I guess it would be the UK version of the Origin. And I'm so passionate because I see what a great brand the State of Origin is in Australia. Can't understand why we've not got Yorkshire, Lancashire over here. Yorkshire, Lancashire isn't just a game either. It started in the 1400s when they were fighting for the throne of England, House York and House Lancaster. And for me, if you want to build a narrative, an emotion about identity, we've got all the ingredients. And I just wanted to ask you, Wally, how much of an influence did New South Wales and Queensland and these rivalries, these battles on the pitch, influence the NRL and where it is today?
It's been to me, it was the rescue package for them. We had the Queensland versus New South Wales games going for 75 years. New South Wales dominated. There were small periods where Queenslanders had a good group of players together, and they won for a couple of years in a row. But it had taken a little bit of a hard knock for 25, 26 years, I think it was, where Queensland didn't win a series. We get flogged every year, and there seemed to be more interest in how much Queensland were going to get thrashed by, rather than were we a chance. All of the good players were picked up by the Sydney clubs. They'd go down there. Of course, they had the poker machines. The extra money coming into those Sydney clubs allowed them to be able to make a much richer offer to the players. In Queensland, we couldn't afford it, so couldn't keep them. I had an opportunity to probably go and play for a Sydney club, but quite thankfully, State of Origin came about in 1980, and I can still remember the boss of the Queensland Rugby League, Senator Ron McAuliffe. He come up with a big line by saying, if you give us our players back, we will beat you in the first State of Origin game, and Rugby League, the interstate series, will be rescued. It came about, we felt enormously under pressure. That game came around, and I was 20 years of age. Mel Meninga turned 20 the day of the game, Chris Close, and of course we had blokes like Beatson, Rod Morris, Kerry Bosted, Rod Reddy, famous Kangaroo players on our side that went out and probably played the games of their lives. Yeah. And while we felt very good about winning the game, we knew that we'd also lived up to the hopes of the fans that had supported us so wonderfully for so long, and finally giving them something to celebrate.
There you have it from the King, their version of the Origin. Please bring it back. Let's have those rivalries over in the UK and get some real legend going. We haven't got long because he's on stage soon, Wally, but we've got some questions from the Rugby fans who have kindly tweeted in and messaged in. We've got one from Joe Ball. Who is the toughest player you ever played with or against?
Toughest player I've played with, there's been a number of those. I'd put it down to Beatson as being one of the toughest. If it has to go to one player though, on just how much pain and pressure he can take on the field, Trevor Gilmeister. Very small bloke. In the old terms, he's about 5'9", 5'9" and a half. Yep. Weighs a little bit less than 13 stone. Went out there and he was the best hitter that I ever saw, the best tackler that used to break blokes in half. And I often used to say it about Gilly, whenever I watched him play, you kind of got the impression that he was out there to make an opponent's career as short as possible.
Thankfully I didn't play in their day. Wow. What did you learn from your time at Wakefield in England?
How important it was to communicate. Everybody had to do it. Look, I don't think I was welcome at Wakefield. I received a call that came in, and it was from a great supporter of the Wakefield club, Barry Huff was his name, and he said, we're trying to avoid relegation. The coach of the Wakefield team was Derek Rocky Turner, one of Great Britain's greatest and toughest ever players. Yep. So I got the chance to be able to meet him and talk about what was expected. The players, though, I don't think they really wanted me there, and I couldn't blame them. The international ban had been in place for a number of years, and when I got the chance to go there, I was basically told to give them a figure, how much it was going to cost, and I threw up a number that I thought, they'll panic and just say we can't afford it, and it'll get me off the pressure. I said £1,000 a match, which nobody was getting £1,000 a match in those days. That'd probably equate these days to, I don't know, $50,000 or £50,000 a game. Wow. It was ridiculous, and when I arrived there, I don't think I was all that welcome. A lot of the players were hoping that I'd get hit by a bus or something, but I got the opportunity to play with some wonderful footy players. Nigel Stevenson was our captain, and I built a special friendship with a young hooker by the name of Colin Maskell, who eventually transferred to Leeds and spent a decade there, and he came over and of course played in the Brisbane Rugby League competition and stayed at my place over there, and I had the thrill. The best part of the whole campaign, though, while playing for Wakefield, was I got the chance to meet the English Rugby League public, and they impressed me over the moon. I used to watch them travel from one side of the country to the other. They can have the most appalling conditions, the snow, or the rain that was around, but they'd still follow you. They still supported you at the end of the day, and to have the opportunity to meet a whole pile of those people, whether they were Wakefield supporters or opposition, was something that I regard I was a very lucky man to do.
I will digress. The part of the book that he speaks about is transfer to Wakefield. I'm scared to death of flying, and I'm on the plane back from Australia in the worst turbulence ever. And so I'm a little bit panicky, but I'm reading this part of the book and I was laughing out loud while I was terrified, because it's the time as well when you just met Jackie and you didn't want to come to England because you had other things going on, and they're offering him this money and putting up a little bit, and it just goes, double it, and they go, all right then, deal. And I was laughing. So funny, read it. I haven't got much time, so you'll have to read it. That was a question from DC, whoever that is. Liz Carr, did you ever get offered big money to sign for another English team in the peak of your career?
Yeah, I did. I was hoping you weren't going to ask this question. Yeah, I did. I had a very special relationship with a bloke by the name of Graham Lowe. He coached in the Brisbane competition. He coached Norths and took them to a grand final win when they were probably 100-1 shots. He coached New Zealand. They beat Australia in the Test series, so his ability as a coach climbed even more instantly. And of course, he came to Wigan. Came over here and was in charge of a wonderful side here that had a great success. He got in contact with me and said that he wanted to make sure that I could come over. I was told to speak to Maurice Lindsay and become a little bit more open on my conversation. I said to him, mate, I want to be there. I want to play under you. Right. You're the coach. I want to be there. There's some great players there. Ellery Hanley was there as well. And I thought I just could not have a better chance to be able to do it. I got called about a week later and said, look, there's a bit of an issue here. We've got a couple of players that don't think it would be a good idea for you to come over. And one of them basically said that he doesn't want you to come and play.
Right.
I said, look, I can understand that. It's ridiculous. The guys are getting good money. They don't really need me. They've got a whole pile of internationals there. I would have loved to have done it. I apologised to Maurice Lindsay, even more to Graham Lowe, because I had enormous respect for him as a coach. Right. And I can imagine what it would have been like to play for Wakefield. I had the chance to play at their to play for Wigan. Yeah. I had the chance to play at their home ground on number of occasions, including a test match, and saw the atmosphere that was attached to the place. I thought that I'd missed out on one of the greatest challenges of my life.
I remember that test match. In fact, I think you talked about it afterwards, and you said that when you come over, and I'm paraphrasing, so I might be a little bit wrong here, I'm not quoting him exactly, but two things that really stuck out: they weren't fit enough, and there were lots of players in that GB team that were over 30. And I'm sat here at 36-year-old thinking, I think my time's nearly done. There's some great questions here. I know Gary Schofield calls himself the legend all the time, but and Alec Murphy, I can think of a few candidates, but who's the best rugby league player you've seen come out of England? And that's from David Barton.
I'd probably have a couple of guys that had to. Ellery would go in there. Yep. He was as strong a ball carrier as I ever saw in football. He was fantastic. Did a marvellous job. I used to say to the guys, look, mightn't be what is an outstanding promotion for the game, but let's get rid of him, whether it's legal, illegal, or a bus running him over before the game. I don't really care. Just make sure we got rid of him with a couple of high shots. Would have loved to have played alongside him. Gary Schofield, I thought, was one of the most talented runners, elusive runners with the football. Did an extraordinary job. And Kevin Ward was a guy that I used to have a look at. I used to think, if you're going to go out there and hurt this bloke, we're going to need to take a baseball bat onto the field with us, wrap it round your head, and if it splits his skin, then we're a chance of knowing that he's hurt. He just never gave up any indication that he was under pain. Yep. And one bloke that I used to feel for a little bit was Lee Crooks. He came into the Great Britain side in 1982. I think he was 19 years of age, and he was basically thrown to the wolves. Yep. Great Britain had a side that most of the team were 35, 36, and doing it in Australia had arguably their finest side ever. Yep. Lee got thrown to the wolves for that, and he played a very aggressive game. He let us know how unwelcome we were, and I thought that he was an extremely good player that had a huge future.
Yeah, I've got two really selfish questions to ask to finish with. I watched a game that you played in, and the teams obviously couldn't deal with you, so their answer was to try and knock your head off. And the one particular New Zealand game, every time you got the ball, they seemed to just get a bit of a whack. And the game's changed now. It's not become sanitised, but it is not as gladiatorial, and that's a different product to sell. Now, I respect that we need player welfare, and I think it is good that there's some things that we've changed, but I wanted to ask your opinion. Is the game in a better place now than what it was in your day?
I'm glad you brought it up, actually. I mean, I'm an old-timer, back playing in the days when we thought it was tough. 20 or 30 years before that, you used to be lucky if you came off the field with your head still in the same place. When I was asked to describe my feelings a couple of years ago, I said, look, I can understand they're trying to make the game as marketable as possible, look as clean as it possibly could be. Yep. But their search, and my term was that they were searching for a level of perfection that just didn't exist. And a lot of the times, some of the decisions were being made by people that have never played rugby league in their life. Yeah. They've made the important decisions, and they think that they're doing it. It's the right thing. We'll be able to promote the game in the best way possible. But if you ask the fans what they want to watch, and if you ask the players what they want to take part in, 99% of them will say rugby league as it was in the old days, the toughest gladiatorial example of sport that you could ever see.
Yeah, and we all know what we're getting ourselves into. We all want to play that game, and I love it. And my last question, Wally, you've mentioned the word perfection a few times while I've been sat here with this for this last 20 minutes. And I'm always interested in why people become the people they are and who they are. And listening to some of your story, your dad in particular was always asking the question, well, what can you improve if you scored a load of tries? Did you miss any tackles? If you had a great defensive game, how was your offensive game? What was the number one core ingredient that made Wally Lewis the person that he is today?
Sitting down at the end of the game, I'd either be an extremely happy man or disappointed. My dad often used to say to me, if you're going to sit there and you're going to pat yourself on the back and talk about all the good things that you did throughout the course of the game, you're not going to be hungry for the next game that comes along.
Yep.
Try and be there. Try and give yourself something that you want to strive to achieve. And if you sit down at the end of that day and feel completely happy knowing that you've pleased yourself, you've got to know that you've also got to please everybody else that's sitting there watching it in the grandstands. If you can do that, I think you're going to retire a happy man. I just feel very privileged to have played the game of rugby league, made plenty of great mates that I've played against and alongside, but in particular, pleased the people that have been the real support for rugby league, and that's been the fans that put bums on seats every time they put the money in the gate.
I don't think you can beat that. I've run out of time with the King. I wish I had another hour, but thank you very much, sir, for your time.
My pleasure.
Brilliant, thank you.